Welcome back to the Set of the Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Today we are once again pleased to welcome Tim Munson to the Set of the Verdict for his third appearance. Tim is chairman of the board of OERB. He has been involved in the oil and gas business for 30 years as a geologist. He did his undergraduate work and his master's work at West Texas State University. He is currently employed by Spartan Resources and has been for a while, still in the oil and gas business. He has 14 years involvement with OERB in all aspects of its work, starting as a Petro Pro, and he'll tell you what that is. He still prides himself as being a Petro Pro, up to occupying the top spot as chairman of OERB. Tim, welcome back.
Pleasure to be here. I appreciate you having me back, guys.
You have a lot of educational efforts going on. What can you update us on the past year?
Okay, well, I can tell you, in this past year, we had a big initiative that we called the OERB Homeroom. In the previous visits, I've been here and told you sort of what we do in the way of curricula that we offer for free to students K through 12 across the state. We also provide teacher training through workshops. So a teacher who's interested in our curricula can come to a one-day workshop. He or she will leave with up to $1,700 worth of supplies that they then can take back to the classroom and use. So we've had that for years. This past year, though, we had an initiative for OERB Homeroom where we created a web-based space that is an umbrella for all of our educational materials and curricula. It enables us to update our teachers with new material without having to send hard copies. But it also gave us a whole new facet that allowed us to create virtual field trips and virtual labs. So we have a character called Leo, and Leo is sort of a quirky CSI kind of scientist, and he takes the students through various experiments illustrating scientific concepts. And the teachers really like that because it gives them an entertaining way to augment the in-class curriculum. Another thing that we've done with Leo is we have developed a series of virtual field trips. So a lot of students now will have a virtual opportunity to tour an active drilling well and go up on a rig and see what actually happens on a drilling well. We've got some for seismic surveys, and we've got some coming up for hydraulic fracturing and completion. So it's a whole new avenue. We're really excited about it. Everybody who's seen any of the labs has really been excited with them.
Why is this so important?
Well, I don't know. There's been a lot of talk. I'm sure you've all read the same stories I have, how important it is for science, technology, engineering, and math jobs. We don't have enough skilled students. We don't have the proper training at the grade school and high school level so that they can go on to careers and get college degrees in that. So one of the reasons it's important is it gives us an opportunity as an industry to go into the classroom and explain to students, here is connect a potential career path with why it's important at third, fourth, fifth, and beyond to focus on science and math and those things, and it connects them with a potential career path. So I think it's important in that regard.
Give us an update on your well site cleanup program. That, of course, was the first thing we ever talked about when we had you or your representative on the show a number of years ago. And the number I don't remember at the time, but it seemed like a big number then. It's certainly grown exponentially now. Yeah,
the OERB is basically tasked with two missions. One is education of students and the public. The other is environmental restoration of abandoned and orphaned well sites. So what we do is we take applications from landowners who come to us and say, I believe I've got some old oil field debris or contamination I'd like for you to come look at. We go and do a site assessment, and if it is an abandoned and orphaned well site, there can be no currently active owner attached to it. Once we identify that, then we go in and clean it up free of charge and bring it back as close as we can to a natural state.
What era are most of these wells from?
The bulk of them are pre-regulatory, so they're probably in the 20s and 30s for the most part. After the 30s and 40s, we started to do a much better job as a state in regulating that.
In general, what were they not doing then that we're doing now to
well, they just there was no requirement. So back in those days, they might have had wooden derricks with large concrete foundations, and they might just either leave the whole thing there and the wood would eventually disintegrate and the large concrete blocks or the base would still be there. That's what a lot of our stuff is, concrete debris. We clean up concrete debris, we clean up salt scarring and other things, but we've been very effective at identifying sites. We've got a consulting firm that we work with called Beacon Consulting, and they've helped us identify additional sites, and so we continue to inventory more sites. We celebrated our 13,000th well site cleanup last fall. It was in Nowata. It was on a public use area used for hunting and fishing. So the OERB felt especially gratified in being able to give back to the community in that way. So we are now beyond 13,500 sites. We've invested, since inception of the OERB, we've invested about $85 million in environmental restoration and cleanup.
Now, are these state funds you're investing?
Now, these are funds that are voluntarily contributed to the OERB through a 0.1% assessment on the sale of crude oil and natural gas. So these funds come from the Oklahoma's oil and gas producers and royalty owners. And
So
it's
they're
all voluntary.
Voluntary membership.
Completely voluntary.
But it seems like this is a finite number. It seems like at some point you would have exhausted the cleanup opportunities in the state of Oklahoma.
Well, at some point we will, but for the foreseeable future, we still have a fairly significant backlog.
It's not slowing down much.
Well, not slowing down much, but at someday, probably someday we will run out of them, but right now we got plenty.
Well, you'd like to work yourself out of that job.
That's a job that we look forward to doing.
Well, and if I invite anyone to look at a photograph of Oklahoma City in the 1930s and 40s, and it's just a sea of oil wells.
Right.
You see the derricks throughout the city, and you're thinking to yourself, well, yeah, that makes sense. They probably weren't doing the ecologically the right thing back then, either through act of ignorance or greed, and today it's responsibility of this generation to come in and clean that up. Do you feel like that the major cities, Oklahoma City and Tulsa, inside the city limits are cleaned up pretty well, or do you feel like it's just an issue, just as much of an issue in the urban areas as it is in the rural areas?
Well, it has historically probably been just as much, but I think in the more urban areas it's probably been identified and rectified much more than in some of the more rural areas. But we have sites all across the state, all 77 counties. I think we've done a site.
Is cleaning up an oil well different from cleaning up a gas well as far as what remains?
It can be different in some subtle ways, but I mean basically an oil and gas site is pretty much the same. There's the same basic facilities there, so there's not too much difference in that regard.
How many folks are involved with the cleanup work at OERB? Do you contract that work out to subcontractors, or
yeah,
how do
we
you
have.
do that?
We use, like I said, we use Beacon Environmental as our primary contractor, and so we have staff members that oversee all of that, but the actual field work is done through Beacon and their subcontractors. So they have people who do dirt work and haul off and other things, and if we have any kind of material that we can recycle, we typically attempt to do that as well. That was a question that I got recently, but most of it, like I say, is old concrete debris and material like that, and erosional issues that we can resolve. They didn't leave the site in a proper manner, so that over years and years you've had some major erosional features develop, and we've been able to go in and fix those and put the land back into productive use.
How does Oklahoma compare with other states about their ability to get out and clean up these types of sites?
I don't know that there's any other state that has a program anywhere near like the OERB here in Oklahoma. I think we are unique in that, and I think that it speaks volumes about the industry's commitment to give back and to rectify things that happened in the past. It was pre-regulation in a lot of cases. Sometimes it was done out of ignorance, but we as an industry stepped up to the plate. As you said, it's all voluntary money, and we do the best we can to rectify it where we can.
Now, if Spartan, your current firm for which you work, were to go out and drill a well today, and let's say it's a dry hole, you want to get out of there, get rid of it, be done with it, Spartan would pretty much be required, would it not, to clean up that site under the regulatory scheme we have today.
Yes.
So is the vast bulk of the ones that you're cleaning up ones that were, as you put it, pre-regulation?
Yeah, these are all orphaned or abandoned, meaning that we make every attempt we can to see if there is a responsible party that can be held accountable. So all of our sites are orphaned and abandoned. We cannot, the Oklahoma Corporation Commission and the OERB cannot find the party that was responsible. And once we can prove that, then we step in, and then it falls under our purview, and we go in and rectify it.
You do have an emphasis, do you not, in well site safety as well?
Yes, we do. We take well site safety very seriously. We want to do everything humanly possible to make sure that no one, whether it's a child or an adult, gets injured around oil field facilities out of ignorance.
Does that happen fairly frequently?
It is very, very infrequent, but we still take it very seriously. And this past year, we spent about $690,000 roughly on advertising campaigns. We have one campaign called Duh Dangerous, which is aimed at kindergarten through 6th grade. It's really entertaining, but kindergarten through 6th grade. And we have another campaign for middle and high school. It's called Lucky, and that may have been the one you said.
I believe it is.
We are ramping up our airing of those things at this time of year. As school starts to let out and students have more free time on their hands, we try to raise public awareness and get the information into the hands of the students and their parents so that they just raise their awareness of the dangers any industrial workplace would have, and oil and gas sites no different. So we do that. We also have a statewide contest that we hold each year for students to, we have a coloring contest, a poster contest, and an advertising campaign contest. And last year we had roughly 3,000 students across the state take part in this. At the end of that, we have a celebration for the winners at the state capitol. We did that just a couple weeks ago. We had Lieutenant Governor Todd Lamb welcome the students and their parents and the teachers to the capitol. And then we had an awards ceremony. And then after the awards ceremony, everybody was invited over to the OERB offices where they had lunch and a little party. So it's not only recognition of the students and their efforts, but it also raises awareness across the board of the importance of well site safety.
The legislature didn't try to talk OERB into cleaning up the Capitol building, did they?
I don't think that falls under our purview, no. I was careful when I walked in.
There is talk about a revolution in the energy industry, and a lot of it has to do with new technologies. In fact, this month's cover of Forbes magazine has Harold Hamm on the cover, and part of that story gets into the technology and how Oklahoma energy companies and others are now able to draw more out of the ground than they previously would with one hole,
right.
At least to begin with. Tell us more about hydraulic fracturing and how you look as a geologist at the technology that it's advancing.
Okay. Well, hydraulic fracturing is not a new technology. We've been using it for over 60 years. So it's proven, it's safe, it's effective. What is new is the tying together hydraulic fracturing with horizontal drilling technology. Those two technologies married together is what's enabled us as an industry to bring about this renaissance that you mentioned. And the last 3 or 4 years, we have been able to not only stop the decline, but we've bent the production decline curve back up. Yeah. So the last 3 years, we've increased domestic oil and gas production year over year. And it's only because of the utilization of these two technologies married together. So if you'll let me, I wanted to give a brief, not many people understand hydraulic fracturing, or at least I don't think they do. And there may be a lot there may be a lot of bad information. So I'll give you a real simple understanding of it. There's basically 4 phases to an oil and gas well. You have a drilling phase, a completion phase, a production phase, and a plugging and an abandonment phase. So the drilling phase is where the drilling rig's out there. We drill the well. Once we're done, we run steel casing to the end of the wellbore, and we pump cement behind that so that there's a pressure integrity seal between the formation and any surface waters or anything else in the casing. Then we move the drilling rig off, and then the completion phase starts, and that's where hydraulic fracturing occurs. We go in and we perforate the casing, and then we pump fluid down through the casing. Typically it's 95 to 100 or 99% water and sand, but it's extremely high pressure, and so we pump that down into the casing, and it goes out the perforations, and it causes the rock to crack. And so what's new is, with this horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing, we now can produce hydrocarbons at an economic level from zones we knew had hydrocarbons in them. We just didn't have the ability to get them out economically. So we create an artificial crack or fracture in the formation, and in this fluid we have proppant. Most of it is just sand, but it may be some sort of a ceramic proppant. But we pump the proppant in the fluid.
What word are you saying?
Prop to like prop something open.
Oh, okay.
So the proppant goes in with the fluid, and once we stop pumping, take the pressure off, then the formation wants to close back down. Well, that proppant will hold it open. And now we have a high permeability streak in the zone, which most of these rocks are tight as this table. They have a lot of hydrocarbons in them, they got porosity, but they don't have any permeability. So by cracking the rock open and propping it open, we then allow the hydrocarbons to migrate to the wellbore and flow to the surface. And so 99% of what's in a hydraulic frac, the frac fluid itself, is water and sand. That other 1 to 1.5% those are chemical additives that do primarily two things. One, they reduce the friction so that we can pump the water at a high enough velocity and a high enough pressure that we can get it out into the formation. The second thing that is in those additives is it gives the fluid the ability to carry with it that proppant to hold it in suspense until it gets out to the end of the crack or the frac. But the chemistry of what goes into, and we're doing a better job as an industry of being transparent about what what specifically is the chemical makeup of it. But most of the things that are that 1 to 1.5% is chemicals that are found in common household cleaners and in makeup and in things like pool cleaner. So it's nothing really that exotic. But historically, companies have had to try to maintain trade secrets or competitive advantage. But we realize now that we have to do a better job of taking away and demystifying the process, and so people can better understand it. But that's what's led to this renaissance.
Well, in your view, why is there some level of controversy about it in some states?
Well, I think it's primarily just because people don't have a full understanding of the process, and it's human nature not to trust something or to be fearful of something you don't understand. I think that's the key.
Mm-hmm. How deep does this fracking go? How deep underground?
Okay, well, that's a good question, and I can tell you in Oklahoma we have production all the way down well below 25,000 feet, so 5 miles in the ground. But not all wells are fracture stimulated, only maybe 20 to 25%. More and more nowadays, but historically that's been the case. So the average horizontal shale well is probably about 7,500 feet for that fracture to occur. And if you want to put that in your mind's eye as a perspective, when you were driving down to the basketball game last night, you looked up at the big Devon Tower. Well, imagine about 9 Devon towers stacked end on end. That's about the depth at which we actually are working under the ground. All of the freshwater aquifers exist in the top 1,000 feet for the most part. So you're thousands of feet away from any of the freshwater aquifers that we rely on for our drinking water and all of our water. So, and in addition to that, we have multiple layers of protection in the form of casing and cement that protect the freshwater aquifers up at the surface from all of the things that we're doing 7,500 feet or so below.
Mm-hmm. Is there any governmental agency that regulates fracking?
Well, there are, and you have federal. The hydraulic fracturing process is highly regulated, to be honest with you. We have federal regulations, we have state regulations, and local regulations. So the EPA, of course, is the body at the federal level that creates the regulations. They sometimes will defer or delegate the administering of those to state regulatory bodies, such as the Oklahoma Corporation Commission in Oklahoma. So in Oklahoma, the Oklahoma Corporation Commission regulates hydraulic fracturing. There are other entities such as the Department of Environmental Quality that monitors air issues associated with hydraulic fracturing, and then the OSHA and EPA are involved with some of the other associated things that go on in a fracture process.
Tim, you're a geologist, and you know that there's more and more earthquakes occurring in central Oklahoma. What's your take? Why are we seeing more earthquakes now than we ever have in our lifetime?
Well, it's a good question, and I'm glad you asked that because I get that a lot from students and students' parents. Oklahoma, seismic activity and earthquakes are not new to Oklahoma. The only reason that we have such a significant resource of hydrocarbons in Oklahoma is because we have some very, very major fault systems in Oklahoma that have enabled, over geologic time, huge accumulations of sedimentary beds to form. Okay, so we have a major structural feature basically going north and south down the center of Oklahoma called the Nemaha Ridge. And then in the southern portion of Oklahoma, about the southern third, we have a series of major fault systems collectively known as the Ouachita, Wichita, Arbuckle Mountain Front. And along these major fault systems, there have been thousands and thousands of feet of movement over geologic time. Now, in more recent times, say in the last 100 years, we know that there have been recorded seismic events in, I think, 70 or 72 of the 77 counties in Oklahoma. Most of those are along these known existing tectonic features, but some of them aren't. Mm-hmm. And so when people ask me, what's up? In the last 3 to 5 years, we've had a significant uptick in the mm-hmm. number of occurrences. And so what I would tell you is I don't think that we have nearly enough data to differentiate whether or not this is just a normal occurrence or if this is something that has some other, there's something else that's impacting it.
About 30 seconds left. Anything you want to wrap up that thought?
Okay. No, I think that's it. But I would say that if you have any other questions or have any other information you want to find out about the OERB, go to OERB.com and we'll have links and information to anything else you might want to know about us.
Great. We will put that information up at the end of the show as well.
Okay, thank you.
Tim Munson is the chairman of the OERB, is our guest today. We appreciate your work.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks very
Pleasure to be
much.
here.
And Kent and I will have a final word after this.